When we attempt to put together an exercise program, choosing appropriate exercises can be quite confusing. This presentation will discuss different types of resistance training exercises you may choose to consider. There are a few different ways you can classify exercises. One of the ways that you can do it is by looking at the condition by which your muscles perform work. So exercise can be isometric, isotonic, or isokinetic. Another way to look at or classified exercises to looking at how the muscles are used. So in this manner, exercise can be isolated or compounded. We'll be exploring this term and compare the difference between different types of exercises in this video. If you look at the way the muscles are engaged during a particular exercise, from this perspective, exercise can be classified based on these modes of contraction and can be isotonic, isometric, or isokinetic. Let's have a look firstly at isometric exercises. We know now that isometric contraction is when a muscle develops tension with no change in muscle length. This can be from a contraction against immovable resistance, to hold things in place, or to maintain a certain static posture. Well, isometric exercises are exactly that. Exercises whereby there's no observable movement and changes in muscle length. A plank, as you can see in this picture, is a good example of an isometric exercise. This is when you have to maintain a posture in that rigid position for a period of time. Although it has been shown that strength gain are possible from isometric exercises, these strength gains are only at the specific angle which the exercise is performed. Hence, to make isometric exercise effective at increased functional strength, it must be repeated at many different joint angles. There is also evidence suggesting that improvement is also rate specific, meaning that isometric strength gains are seen mostly in slower movements which are not functional and of little use to people wishing to return to any kind of physical activity. In instances such as during rehabilitation from an injury, isometric exercise may be the only choice due to immobilization of limbs. Isometric exercise allows the performers to maintain at least some neuromuscular function and maintain the strength of muscles engaged in these exercises. Isotonic is the term used most frequently to describe exercise using fixed resistance. For example, when you're lifting a dumbbell or a 10 kilogram dumbbell to perform a particular exercise, the weight of the dumbbell remains unchanged. The term is misused, however, as isotonic literally means equal tension. In exercise science, isotonic contraction is a contraction in which the tension remains constant as the muscle shortens or lengthens. In the real world, however, this does not really happen as the load imposed on the muscles will change due to a number of mechanical factors. So even though that 10 kilogram dumbbells, the weight of it remains unchanged, as you move to the full range of motion, the load that 10 kilogram imposed on your musculoskeletal system will change throughout. When a specific weight or load is being moved, the load imposed on these muscles will vary due to change in length tension relationship of the muscles, force angle relationships mechanically and anatomically, and also the speed of the exercise. It has been suggested that the word isoinertial is a more accurate description of this type of movement. However, that word is rarely used or probably never used in general discussion of this type of exercise. To illustrate this point, this is the force time curve recorded at the bar during a bench press exercise, highlighted in the red line on the slide. As you can see, initially, to move the bar from its resting position, your musculoskeletal system will need to accelerate that bar upwards. Therefore, initially, increased amount of force is required to accelerate that bar to get it moving. And once the bar is moving, you only need to apply enough force to maintain its momentum so it can move upward against gravity. And towards the end of the repetition, you can see you're actually decelerating the bar. So the bar actually will stop at the end of the movement range. So towards the end of the repetitions, you actually don't need to apply as much force as the bar is slowed down before it stops at the end of the repetition. So you can see here, force applied on the bar varies throughout the repetition. This means that the load imposed on your musculoskeletal system will also change throughout the repetition. As pointed out in the previous presentation, some machines have been designed to change the resistive torque throughout the range of motion to accommodate for variation in mechanical advantage of your muscles through the movement range. And the idea of this is that so muscle tension remain more constant through the range of movement. Variable radius cams are often seen in machine weights to change the length of the moment arm through which the weight stack acts through. The rationale was to provide more resistance at points in the range of motion where the muscles has greater mechanical advantage, and less resistance where the muscles has less mechanical advantage. This enables the muscles to maintain more constant tension throughout the range. For this to work as planned, however, the performer has to move at constant slow angular velocity, which is difficult to do consistently as one exercises. Also, it has been demonstrated that cam-based machines frequently fail to match the normal torque capability patterns of your musculoskeletal structure. Isokinetic literally means equal motion. Isokinetic contraction, therefore, is the contraction at which speed of movement or joint angular velocity remains constant. It requires a specialized machine equipped with some sort of hydraulic or pneumatic system or an active dynamometer. The interesting aspect of exercising using isokinetic devices is that they enable maximum contraction at a constant speed over a full range of motion. Keep in mind that during a normal exercise condition, muscle force will vary throughout the range of movement. Isokinetic devices therefore accommodates for this and adjust resistance accordingly to enable constant velocity. The term accommodating resistance exercise has been used to describe isokinetic training. The idea behind isokinetic training is that it provides a speed-specific exercise regime, enabling one to replicate more closely some specific athletic skills. Training at fast speed has also been shown to increase strength at slower speed of movement. However, the assumption of real-world specificity may be false, as a typical human movement, particularly in athletic performance setting, is characterized by acceleration and deceleration of a constant mass, rather than constant level of contraction through the full range of movement. Isolated or single joint exercises are exercises that focus on one particular joint or muscle group. And on the slide here, you can see a number of isolated exercises that are commonly seen in the weights room. Some trainers do have a view that these exercises are not very functional, and the argument for that is generally in the real world movement, you rarely activate or use only one particular muscle group. They are, however, useful for conditioning specific muscle because the movement doesn't rely on coordination between synergistic muscle groups. As these exercises specifically stress the targeted muscle or muscle group, it has been suggested that the local muscular hypertrophy and strength can occur earlier. Single joint exercises also have the advantage of allowing exercises to selectively target smaller, weaker muscles to ensure balance as they progress. Ensuring that the individual muscle groups are well conditioned also serves as a good foundation for learning and executing more complex compound movements later on. Compound exercises, on the other hand, are multi-joint exercises that recruit several major muscle groups. For example, during the bench press exercise, both chest muscles and the forearm extensors can be considered prime movers. The pectoralis major horizontally adducts the arm, while the tricep brachii extends that forearm to complete the bench press movement. These exercises are considered more functional because they generally require coordination between different muscle groups. Some multi-joint exercises also require the lifter's control and stabilize the weight, and therefore allows the individual to develop stability and balance. There is much discussion in the community on whether compounded exercises are better than single joint exercises. Literature, however, seems to indicate that both are effective for increasing strength and hypertrophy and should be incorporated to get the most out of your training program. Exercise selection, therefore, should be based on the training goals of the individual, rather than whether it is or the exercise is a compounded movement or an isolated activity. Thank you for listening.